excited today. We have Michele Holmes with us. Michele is a veteran homeschool mom of 30 years with a desire to see moms move from feeling overwhelmed by the abundance of available homeschool resources to becoming confident in their ability to discern the best choices for their family. So welcome, Michele.
Thank you, Jen, for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting
me. My pleasure. So let's take a few minutes and just get to know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, maybe something about your family and your how many kids you have.
All right. Well, I am a veteran homeschool mom. I'm defined by that because I've been homeschooling for 30 years. I have 8 children. And I'm actually down to my last 2, yay for me. And I have, let me see, I'm up to 9 grandchildren. So some of my children are married. My adult children are married and have kids. And so it's just an exciting time for us here. And let me see, I started a business called Homeschool Directive, and that's a direct result out of helping coaching hundreds of women who wanted to homeschool confidently. So I created an online course and with coaching. So I have that going on, and so just kind of busy over here at the Holmes house. So
yeah,
that's a little bit about everything that we're up to right now.
Yeah, well, and that's why you're here, because you're a mom who knows about homeschooling. And so we want to talk about that today. So 30 years is a really long time. And you said you're at the last 2. Did it ever feel like it would end? Did you think this day would come?
I actually set the 2020 year mark as the time that I get to retire without a pension. So I've always had that end goal, like, oh, I get to retire without a pension. So, yeah, when I first started homeschooling, though, it was like, oh, I can do this for a year. Oh, I'll try it. I have one kid. Education came really easy for her. It's like, oh, I'll do it 1 year. 1 year became 2, 2 years became 3, and we just kept on. It became our family lifestyle. It was homeschooling is just part of what we do during the day.
Yeah. So why did you get started that first year?
Oh, so it's, when I'm coaching some younger moms and they feel like they have their whole world planned out for them, I'm like, oh, I was going to have 1 child and I was going to run a business and she was going to go to private school because I was only going to have a girl too. So, my big plans of things. I did have my first child. It was a girl, and we did send her to public school for a couple of months. And just to back up the story, I had met somebody that was homeschooling, but homeschooling was never, ever on my radar. But we got into a private school situation, and my education just really came easy for my first daughter. And so she had just turned 5. Her birthday was in July, and she started school in August. We were all excited, and quickly, within a few weeks, we realized that she was way past kindergarten. And so we had to start having these parent teacher meetings, like, what are we going to do with this kid? She's reading and she's, working actually at a 2nd grade level. And the only thing that they could do for her was to put her in 2nd grade. And I have to say, having a 5-year-old with 2nd graders, that didn't seem right to me. I was like, it might be okay right now, but what about high school? When all their friends are in puberty and dating, and she's 2 or 3 years younger than them. It was just one of those things that I just didn't feel right about. Well, I had met somebody that summer, and she was homeschooling 5 kids, and I had a conversation with her, and she's like, well, you should try homeschooling. Like, how bad can it be? And I'm like, this is true. Can I really mess her up? Right? She's already 3 years ahead. Can I really mess her up?
Right. You have some margin to work with. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
did. But that gave me a little bit of confidence.
Yeah.
And so I did exactly what that mom did, right? So that mom that was advising me, I picked the same curriculum she did. And that's how we began. And it just went really, really well for us. We've had a lot of transitions in the way that we do things because obviously I started off homeschooling the way that other mom was homeschooling, and I had to change that to fit our needs. But that's how we got into homeschooling.
That's great. Well, and I noticed you said I can do this for 1 year, and it's funny. Those of you who know me may know that Michele has mentored me in my homeschool journey, and that's all she's told me is 1 year at a time. So 1 year at a time, and 30 years later, here she is with the business that she always thought she would run. So
exactly,
yes.
It's not what my early 20s business was, but I love what I'm doing now. Yeah. And so, Jen, how many years have you been homeschooling now?
This is actually my 9th. I've been telling everyone it's my 8th, and I counted, and I'm like, no, it's my 9th. Holy moly! So
yeah. That's
exciting. Yeah. So tell us, in this 2020 environment where learning has become virtual and everyone's doing it at home, and I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we've all become homeschoolers, but really they're e-learners. What is the difference between e-learning and homeschooling?
Oh, what's the difference between e-learning?
And I'll tell you what I tell people. So
Okay.
I tell people that e-learning is taking the worst of public school and the worst of homeschooling and mixing it up together and saying, do this. And it's hard. That's kind of my perception.
That's exactly the right perception. That is exactly what it is. And my heart goes out to those moms who are having to do this whole e-learning thing. I think the biggest difference between the two is that, with e-learning, everybody else is dictating everything to you. They're telling you, we're going to use this curriculum. Your kids have to report it this time. And even though you're completely responsible to make sure that those things happen, you have to do it on their time and on their schedule. And I think it's like this competing thing, like, oh, I have to get my kid and they need to sit still. I mean, I had some friends tell me that their first grader is sitting in front of a computer for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, that's going to be really hard for that mom to navigate, right? She's probably still working. She's probably trying to get all of her other things done. And, but yet she's still got to make this other thing happen that everybody else is dictating to her. So that's the biggest problem with the e-learning, I think, for why people feel overwhelmed by it. Yeah. And within homeschooling, you get to have control. And not that I'm a control freak. I do have some rules, right? The state tells me that I have to have so many days of school. I need to teach the educational branches. It needs to be in English in the state of Illinois. Every state has their own homeschool requirements. And most every state believes positions homeschoolers at private schools, right? So basically, in the state of Illinois, I'm just a private school with a tiny, tiny budget, right? Like my homeschool budget is small compared to big, gigantic private schools. But where I differ from a private school, if you're going to send your kid to a parochial school or a charter school, is that I'm completely responsible. I pick my vacation days. I pick when we're going to do schoolwork. When we start school, I'm going to pick if we do anything on the computer or not. If we're going to spend some time, going on field trips. So when you have the two worlds, right? So e-learning and homeschooling, the parent is responsible in both cases, but the homeschool parent gets to control a whole lot more of the responsibility than just being dictated to. That's the biggest difference, I think.
Okay. And that kind of leads into some of the pros and cons of homeschooling. You're talking about, one of the pros is you get to manage your own day and curriculum, but that's kind of a con. You also have to figure out what curriculum's going to work. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it doesn't even stop there. Think about it. E-learning, you get to tap into tax dollars, right?
Yes.
You don't have to buy that curriculum. It's being sent to your house. Homeschooling, I have to be proactive. Not only do I have to pay for it, now I have to pick it. Also e-learning, they're saying, here's the curriculum. This is what you're using. And there is like some beauty to that, right? Like, just tell me what I have to do and I'll get it done.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the homeschooling arena, it becomes your responsibility. And so there is that mixture of, I got to pay for it and I have to pick it. So
yes. So with 8 kids that you were homeschooling, did you pick one curriculum for everyone, or did you tailor it for your child?
Oh, this is a great question, because with being in the homeschooling community for so long and having so many children, I have been exposed to a ton of different options. I think the biggest thing for people when they're thinking about homeschooling, or if you've been homeschooling for a while, is to remember that curriculum is a tool that you use. This is to facilitate what you need to accomplish. And you know what? I can use 4 different curriculums with one child if that's what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was more important in my journey with curriculum was me discovering what I thought about education. So I started with a box curriculum, very, very traditional, and I've moved into being more of eclectic, where, I can pay for an online course for one student and buy another curriculum for a different student, because I'm really focusing in on each student, not necessarily that I'm running the school and everybody has to do the same thing. So it helps my children to rise for the occasion, because I'm picking the right tools for them. Because I have some visual learners, I have some kids that need to touch things, and it just kind of helps to be able. And it's a beautiful thing, right? Like with e-learning, you have 30 kids in a classroom, and everybody has to use the same type of curriculum. Where within homeschooling, I can shake things up a little bit and try different things. And I even advise homeschool moms to not spend a lot of money when they're trying to figure out what works and not, because I have a 3-month rule. 3 months, if it's not working, I need to find something else for them to use. So if I don't spend a lot of money, it leaves a little room in the budget if I need to get rid of something because it's not working. Remember, curriculum is just our tools.
And there's so many resources now, local and national, for buying and selling used curriculum, that you can try something out inexpensively, but you can also often recoup your investment if it doesn't work for you. So yes, I've become pretty proficient at recycling those dollars. So one of the things that I always heard before we started homeschooling was, oh, you'll have so much flexibility. And from the outside, I think people look at flexibility as lack of structure and availability, which it's not. So how do you, in your homeschool, how do you balance the structure, but with that flexibility to do the other things? Because I know at one point you ran a food pantry, and now you're doing some traveling for your husband's business. How do you balance those things?
Balancing is a tricky word, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Like what seems calm to one person seems chaotic to another, right? Like having a balanced life really can look different for each of us. I really believe in this philosophy of checking my schedule and making sure that I haven't overscheduled my children. So the first thing that I do within my schedule is I'm making sure that the time that I have allotted for my children, they can actually accomplish that work. So once I get rid of that, like, oh, they're not getting their stuff done, and I'm not sure if I've overscheduled them or they're just being sidetracked
Right.
or procrastinating.
Yeah.
Like that's a big hurdle for me. Like once I have that security, then I can move on to all the different parts of our lives. And but I'm still legally responsible to educate my children. They're not past attending school. So
Right.
I'm still really responsible. And so that has to become a priority in our schedule. So I start with that, and then I just move out to and deviate there's only so many hours in the week. Sometimes during this journey of homeschooling, when I had more children, like, I'm only homeschooling like 2 children and they're in high school. This is like, I've never had it this easy before. Right? Like,
You're a lady of leisure.
yeah. And so as my children got older, or they became more self-efficient students, then my responsibility and my time with them became less. But I have to tell you, there was some times in my life, especially when I had all 8 children and I had like 6 of them in school at one time, in my school at one time, I had to outsource. And that's what I tell a lot of parents, especially if they are feeling really, really over stressed, their load is just really, really heavy. You know what? Don't feel guilty about outsourcing. I mean, the principal at the public school is not mopping the floors, right? The principal at the school is not, cooking food in the cafeteria. So to really embrace this idea and add this to your school budget is like, if you're feeling so overstressed, maybe have your groceries delivered.
Yes, I just started doing that, and it is every week. It's like, you've now saved 10 hours. You've saved 12 hours. And it makes a difference. Yeah.
I mean, I remember saying to my husband one day, I'm like, I don't have even time to go grocery shopping. I mean, I had a daughter that was doing special therapy because she's hard of hearing. And I'm like, I can't even go to the grocery store. And so I think that's really important, is that you're one person, and to keep things balanced, you need to think about you and how you're fitting as the mom is fitting into this whole homeschool world, and how, what do I need to facilitate everything? And again, don't feel guilty if you need to outsource, because maybe it's just getting a teenage mommy helper to come for 4 hours a day to play with your toddlers while you're teaching phonics to your older children. And you say to that, I've actually said this to my mommy helpers, like, don't come and talk to me at all unless the house is on fire. And I remember one time saying this to you, Jen, and you're like, but they can always call 911. Right?
That's right. You still don't have to bother me.
Your job is to do that. And you know what? My toddlers loved it. I made them do all the messy work, play with glitter and paint and puzzles, and they were happy. And I was happy because I met the needs of my toddlers while I was meeting the needs of my middle school kids. And that's a really good way to help keep balance, is to outsource if you need to.
Yeah. So tell me some of the ways with your Homeschool Directive, your business. What are some ways that you help moms get started and become skilled homeschoolers?
Get started homeschooling?
Yeah, and then become skilled at it.
Become skilled at it?
Yeah.
And I have to say that it doesn't matter if you're just new to homeschooling or if you've been homeschooling a long time. I think there's some, an expert, homeschool expert has some skills that they have in place. And, if you're thinking about homeschooling, your first job is to decide to do it, right? Because sometimes just not making a decision is paralyzing you.
Yes.
And so you need to move past that and just make the decision. It's not permanent. Remember, Jen and I said that we took 1 year at a time. Yeah. This is not permanent. We can always put our kids in another private school or in public school. And then what I'm trying to do with the Homeschool Directive is that I think I mean, even our conversation started off, right? Like, what kind of curriculum do you use? I mean, that's where everybody starts. And I have to say, that's the last thing you should even be thinking about. And so what I do is I take homeschool moms and I have them kind of do some really hard work up front and ask them a lot of questions. And I actually help them create a filter where they can use later on when they're deciding to pick out curriculum or classes for their kids that they can join, or different events that they want their family to participate. Because, you know, in the homeschooling world, there are so many good things out there. Yes. Right? Like, that's the beauty of the homeschooling community. There are so many opportunities. And as homeschooling has gotten, I hate to say that, you know, I'm at the beginning of homeschooling. For me was educational reform, to now that it's just a way that people can educate their children. Right. But there's a lot more resources that are available to me now that weren't, you know, 15 years ago, just because the community has opened up so more. Yeah. So I help those moms work through a lot of questions, things like working on their educational philosophy. Like, it's one of those important things that you need to kind of work through. And so I help guide them through that. So when they get to the point and buy curriculum, it's the last thing that they do. And they can look through their filters and say, yes, this is it's a good thing, but it's not the best thing for my family. And I think that's, you know, a homeschool expert has to do constantly, and say, this is great. This is good, but I need great for my family. Yeah. So I hope that explains but that's my goal, is to help homeschool moms do a lot of upfront work so they can get rid of decision fatigue. Like, there is so many decisions that a homeschool mom has to make, and I want to get rid of that fatigue. It needs to go away, and they just need to be able to make decisions. And then once they make the decision, they're very, very confident in that decision. Because we have this saying in Homeschool Directive that you need to have an escape phrase. Because when you get confident, sometimes that makes other people feel like you're judging them. Like, you're like, well, no, I don't want to do that curriculum. It's a good curriculum. It's just not right for my family. Right. That makes that other homeschool mom giving you that advice feel a little like, why doesn't she like my curriculum? Right. Choices, yeah. Right? Right. And it's not that you're wanting to not take her advice. You're like, it's just not working for me. Just like I said, when I first started homeschooling, I emulated the woman who introduced me to homeschooling. It was a box curriculum, and I needed to get away from that because we were consuming the box curriculum in a couple of months. We're like, this is not working for us. And so when you get that confidence, you're going to have an escape phrase. You're going to have to say, well, this is just the best thing for my family right now. Yes. Because when you get confident, it's very, very exciting. But sometimes, you know, it puts other people like second guessing their own choices. So that's not the intent. But the intent is that I want every homeschool mom to feel really confident in their choices.
And that goes back to that 1 year at a time. I mean, that's part of that escape phrase, I think, is, well, for this year, this is what is working for our family. And it's not I am always going to do it this way, or I will never try it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good point. Like, just, you're saying this is just not right for my family right now, or
right.
It's a really good thing. And that, you know, if you don't have an escape phrase, get one.
Yeah. Well, and you've been alongside my entire homeschooling journey. And what I think is funny, well, this is my 9th year. It's really probably the 2nd year I've embraced homeschooling. I'm a reluctant homeschooler, never wanted to do it. Yeah. And still kind of wish my kids were all at school all day sometimes. But you kind of covertly did all this stuff with me. And so I was one of your guinea pigs, I think. But it's made a difference, because what you really did was you gave me a framework off of which to hang our homeschooling choices. And so it supports it in a way that, you know, now if my husband says, why did you choose to do it this way? I can say, because, and I don't feel I'm being questioned. I feel like he's now inquiring and I have an answer. And if he disagrees, we can discuss it and go from there. But I just have a lot more confidence and ownership in what I'm doing. And I have toddlers, I have a junior higher, I have a high schooler, and the college girl's on her own now. But we have all these ages. So I can say what you do works because I would not be confidently homeschooling if you hadn't covertly done this for me. So if somebody thinks that they want to homeschool and they're not sure and they're like, well, maybe we'll try something over, the spring or the summer, what's an easy way that they could test the waters to kind of see if it would be something they'd want to do or their kids would respond well to?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm not sure you're going to like my answer.
Try me.
If someone wanted to test the waters, I think I would suggest to that person to take the time and really watch their children. Not going out and buy a curriculum, because a curriculum is just somebody's way, somebody's thought on how something should be taught. And spend some time watching their kids play. Maybe do the things that you like as a parent. So if you're really enthusiastic about fine arts and you love art and painting and stuff, spend some time with your kids doing all the things that you love, right? Because if you love it, what's going to happen is that your children are going to be invested in it because they see that it's bringing you joy and they want to participate in that. And as older your kids get, sometimes they'll be like, oh,
right.
But they'll learn really fast that, they're not going to do art. I have to say, I was crushed when I first started homeschooling. I'm very artistic and I loved coloring and painting, like all of that. I took mostly art classes when I was younger, and my oldest daughter would cross out color on every worksheet. And she hated coloring. And she actually told me it was a waste of time. Right? But if I had observed that, I would have kept pushing coloring. I finally just said, just circle, right? You do not have to do these things. But I had to learn that about her. And so even though I was really enthusiastic, I learned more about her when I was doing these things. So during this exploration period, just have a lot of conversations, even if they're little, right? Like if you're standing at the table and you're making a recipe together, just say to your kid, like, so tell me about beef. What do you know about beef? And so I had one of my homeschool moms did this, and she was telling me how amazed her son is in first grade. And he went all the way through, beefs are for cows, cows eat grass, they have two stomachs, and went on and on and on. And I think that when you are in this exploration stage with your children, what's going to happen is you're going to realize that a lot of the information that your kids know, you've already taught them to them, right? They might be glimpsing, bits and pieces here from school, but they're going to be listening to the things that you say, things they hear on TV, things they hear about other people. And it should start encouraging you that, hey, I've been teaching this child all along, right? And that's the fear that you, when you're starting off homeschooling, that you're not up for the job. But technically, let's say that you brought it, a kid is going to start school at 5 or 6 now. You've taught them a lot of things in those years.
Right.
I just forget that. Like, oh, I was responsible for that. I taught them their alphabet. Oh, I taught them to count. So that's my suggestion about what to do. And I know for me to say, don't go out and buy anything and spend a little time. But I think the payoff is huge. I just really think the payoff, and hopefully the payoff is to show the mom that she can do it. Basically, that, the mom has the confidence to take that next steps and organize the school day, because that's
Yes.
really the only next thing is
Yeah.
all she's going to be doing is organizing how she's going to become really intentional of how the educational branches are being taught, because she's been doing
Yeah.
it the whole time, right?
And that's one of the ways that you can come along and help her and say, okay, given you work full time or whatever your time constraints are, let's figure out how you can homeschool in a way that meets your family's needs and checks all these boxes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just mention one thing about time?
Yes.
Because I know this is a big thing, right? I don't have enough time. And, if you're, just kind of even looking at Jen and I, we both have large families. We both run businesses. Our husbands run businesses. It does take a lot of time. But my homeschool schedule can look different each season.
Yeah.
So, we happen to be, in a really strange time right now with COVID. But when we're full, doing sports and music lessons and these different seasons, I tweak my schedule. So big volleyball family, girls love volleyball. Well, but their volleyball practice starts at 3:00 in the afternoon. Well, that's but they have to leave at 2:30. Right.
Yeah.
So I call it Sunday school. And after church on Sunday, we do school.
Okay.
I just move our extra work because we can't get it done. They're teenagers. They don't, get up at the crack of dawn. Right. But that's one of those flexible things. My school day and my school hours do not have to look like public school. Yeah. For instance, one more suggestion on this or tip is that my husband was between jobs. He was starting a business and he still needed to work. And so he was taking temp jobs and he was working third shift. So that meant he got home. He was sleeping while we were awake. Well, I just moved school to nighttime, right? And I've done that a couple of times where I did school from 7 to 9 at nighttime. I put my little kids to bed and we just kind of set the table for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 nights a week, just to get everything in. So that's really important, is that your school schedule and the time that you do things can really be flexible.
And I was going to say, that's the flexibility of homeschooling. Yeah. So, well, our time is almost done. And so one thing that I ask everyone is a little bit more lighthearted, but what is your favorite gadget?
Now, this is a gadget?
Yes.
My favorite gadget. You know what? I'm a kitchen person, gadget person. And so my Instapot is my lifesaver. Yeah. So I know it's not fancy
yeah, but it's powerful.
But it really helps.
Yes, that's a great gadget. I love mine too. So, and so how can people connect with you most easily?
Well, I would love for everybody to connect it's homeschooldirective.com, Homeschool Directive, Facebook and Instagram. It's just Homeschool Directive, and wherever you want to find me, hopefully you will find us there.
Okay. And I know you have a special offer. I'm going to put that up there. So tell us about this special offer for listeners of the podcast.
Well, for Jen's listeners, I would love to offer you guys a 30% discount off of any of our services. And so I'm just so excited that, Jen has given me this opportunity, and hopefully that you guys, heard something that you're like, hey, I'd like to have some more conversations with Michele. So that's my gift to you guys, is this 30% off discount.
Well, that's very generous. And I hope you all go and check it out and take advantage of it. So, well, Michele, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing the things that you know about homeschooling.
Well, thank you, Jen, for having me on here. I really did enjoy it. Thank you so much.